Hello and welcome to the Post to Post podcast. It is podcast number 67. My name's Neil. I'm joined here with Brent. Coming to you on Sunday. Lots of hockey this week. We're pretty much 3 weeks until the playoffs, so things are really starting to tighten up as far as the NHL standings and as far as like who's going to maybe kind of compete for some trophies and who's going to match up in the playoffs. And I would say that some of the playoff matchups are already set in stone. It looks like Toronto's probably going to play Boston. I can't imagine that changing. It's just a matter of home ice at this point.
And even that is trending in a
certain direction. Boston. Yes. So we're going to go over all of the games from last night, as we always do, as well as some other topics. So thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate everyone who's reached out to me and checked in with my ankle and stuff. And if you guys did not listen to the podcast last week, I did break my ankle, and I just want to give you guys a little bit of an update. So, because I get a lot of questions on a daily basis and private messages and stuff, so I'm just going to address it now, just to let everyone know. I'm just going to give you an update every week. I have a doctor's appointment coming up this Wednesday, hopefully to get a different cast on, a waterproof cast, and probably get the staples out, I would assume. And that's the biggest update. As far as people have been asking me, like, how's your ankle feel? Is it any better? No, it's not any better, unfortunately. It's I have good days and bad days. Good days where it doesn't really hurt that much unless I get up. Like, as soon as I get up and all of the blood rushes to my foot, it's excruciatingly painful. But then there's bad days where even when my leg is elevated, it hurts quite a bit. So, and I don't really know what triggers it. I'm not doing anything differently. It's just some days are good days and some days are bad days. I don't understand it, and I appreciate the good days, but yeah.
What's today?
I don't know. It's too early in the day, so I'm already up and the blood's already down there. So I won't know until I get back upstairs and have my foot elevated. Yesterday was a bad day. Friday was a bad day, but Thursday was a really good day. So I can't explain it, but
I don't like the trends.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, hopefully the doctor's appointment on Wednesday will settle a few things up and get a different cast on. Maybe it'll feel a little bit better and go from there. So,
right on.
Yeah. That's as soon as I get the new cast on, it's basically I have to wait 4 weeks. And then I think that cast comes off, and then I get a walking boot on for 6 weeks. And I'm not allowed any weight on my foot at all until basically 4.5 weeks from now. And that weight is literally minimum weight. Like, if I'm standing up brushing my teeth, I can maybe steady myself with my toe or something. Like, I can't put any major weight on my foot. At the 3-month mark from the injury, I'm allowed to put full weight on the foot, but take it super careful and basically just try and start to walk again. And by 6 months, I should be able to walk basically back to normal. But they said that some people, it takes up to 12 months to get completely back to normal. So my goal is to walk completely normal by 5 months. So we'll see how that goes. But anyways, that's the update on the ankle. I appreciate all the kind words and everything.
Does it make a difference if you weren't able to walk normally before the accident? If you had a weird lurch or a dragging something?
I'm hoping for an improvement.
Okay, that's good. But I will say it's been a joy having you around the house 24/7 for the last 12 days.
I'm sure
it's been magnificent.
I'm sure it has.
Without any break at all. It's been just a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate
You're welcome.
that. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Anyways, on to some hockey. Before we get into some game recaps, I want to talk about two teams, and I want to get your thoughts on these two teams.
All right.
Team number one is the Islanders. So, over the past couple of games, we've seen a bit of a trend in the wrong direction for the Islanders. I'm not sure if you've noticed it or not. I'm not sure if you've watched enough Islanders, but there seems to be a bit of loss of momentum from the Islanders, and I just wanted to get your opinion on if you're worried. So in March, they've played 8 games. They've got only 18 goals in the 8 games. In the last 4 games, they've only scored 7 goals. So does that worry you a little bit?
Not really. they are coming back to earth a little. The thing that if I were an Islanders fan, the thing that would give me confidence is the fact that Barry Trotz is behind the bench.
Definitely.
And he can bring so much experience and calm and direction to the team to make up for what will be a horrifying lack of playoff experience for many, many of the Islanders players. Mm-hmm. But having Trotz back there will be really, really critical. And I also think, and I was remarking this to you last week, I guess it was last week now, when Montreal and the Islanders were playing, that at the time, I don't know what the stat is right now, Greiss and Leonard had identical records, identical save percentages, and only a slight difference in a few of their stats. But what a great goaltending tandem. They were both like 21 and 11 or something.
Yeah. And
the comfort and confidence I would have going into a playoff series with two essentially equivalent goaltenders, they're just swap, plug and play, that would be just fantastic. So I have very little worry for the Islanders right now.
Same here. I agree. I think they have one of the best fourth lines in the entire league, which is basically Martin Cizikas and Clutterbuck. Cizikas is a bit injured right now, so I think he's out of the lineup actually. But they have a lot of depth on the team, and I'm not sure if you noticed. I'm pretty sure you did, but in the Montreal game earlier this week, when Montreal played the Islanders, they had such bad puck luck. Like, there were so many times when that game probably should have been like 5-1. That the puck would jump over their stick, or they would miss the net, or they'd fan on it, or something like that. And the same thing kind of happened in their most recent game against the Detroit Red Wings. And it's just that's why I'm not worried, because there's in the last two games that I've watched for them, it's just been a lot of bad puck luck. And those games could easily have been blowouts for the Islanders. So I'm actually not worried about the Islanders at all.
Yeah. I think there's I guess their first round opponent is yet to be determined with any certainty, just because of the way the standings are working. Right now it would be Carolina, and I think that would be a really good matchup for both teams. But I think the Islanders would stand a real competitive chance in a series like that.
The Metro is so close that, I mean, realistically, any of the Metro teams could end up playing any of the Metro teams in whatever order. I mean, it's not unrealistic that the Islanders could drop a little bit and maybe Pittsburgh goes up, or maybe the Islanders go straight to the top and Pittsburgh moves all the way down to the wildcard spot and they end up playing each other. Like, it's so tight in the Metro. It could happen.
It really is. And as we talked about a little bit last week, as recently as a couple of months ago, the Metro didn't look like it would be a factor other than the top three teams. And I was wondering, frankly, if any of the top three teams in the Metro would have equivalent point stats to the Atlantic, because the Atlantic was so strong, and Tampa still is. But Boston and Toronto, their trajectory is a little flatter now, too. But the Metro has just really, really put it together in the last couple of months.
Yeah, they really have.
Very impressive.
It's intense. Speaking of the Atlantic, though, the other team I want to talk about is the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Oh, yeah.
What's your thoughts on the Toronto Maple Leafs? Again, the same question. Are you worried?
Not being a Leafs fan, I'm not worried at all. But I think Leaf fans should be worried.
I agree, actually.
Yeah. I think Toronto is they're in a scary situation where some of the performances I've seen lately, the win over Philly on Friday night was...
that's crazy.
That you can't win hockey games like that all the time. You just can't pull these things out of the fire in the last 5 minutes of the game. And it took a lot out of them, and I think that showed in the Ottawa game. We'll be talking about the results here shortly.
I agree, actually. That's good. That's a good point.
Yeah, I think Toronto they put it all on the table to get that home win against Philly, and then they had very little left in the tank.
So many defensive breakdowns and lack of back-checking by some of the forwards.
It was awful.
And they just give up so many odd-man rushes and 2-on-1s, and just I feel really frustrated for the Toronto Maple Leafs goalies. And I don't know how you fix that. Like, obviously it's an effort level thing, but obviously this problem's been there for all year. Like,
it has. Toronto's been a team that's been built on offense.
How come it's not fixed yet? How come these forwards won't back check? How come there are these defensive lapses by the defense, like, and giveaways, and just Is that coaching? Like,
I think it has to be somewhat coaching.
is Babcock in trouble? Like, if they obviously they're going to make the playoffs,
I
but
don't
if they
think
go out in the
Babcock-
first round pretty quickly, which honestly it kind of looks like they might, is he gone?
I don't think he would be gone, but I think the people under him, some of the assistants, maybe the defensive assistant, maybe whoever's doing their face-offs, whoever's doing their penalty kill, I don't know. I don't know much about the Toronto organization and who's where. Sorry. But I think Babcock himself, I don't think he is failing to deliver the proper messages in the dressing room. I think the team seems motivated. I think the Friday night result is an example of that the players themselves and the coach, I'm sure, had a good long talk after the second intermission, and then the game changed. But they're not able to do that every night, and they need to have something to play for. I think that, and I don't know that this is true, but I'm sure that it happens in every hockey market, especially the big ones like Toronto, Montreal, Boston, Chicago maybe, and the Western Canadian teams. If the players read the newspapers or read social media too much and get the idea that they're gods when they're doing well, I don't think that's healthy for them, because
I understand.
I think Toronto, they know they're in the playoffs. They know their opponent is probably Boston, and there's not a sense of urgency right now. There should be, because this is the preseason to the playoffs, really. And every team, whether you're in or out of the show, is going to be playing a lot harder because they have things to prove for next year. They have things to prove for July 1st if there's signing deadlines and free agency and all of that. And this is a time when the playoffs haven't begun, but the playoff-type hockey has, and Toronto's slow getting off the mat here.
I find it is interesting that Babcock continues to switch up the lines, but their problem isn't scoring. Like, we'll use Montreal, for example. You okay there?
I'm just trying to plug in the power supply to my laptop, which was unplugged by somebody, not me. But so I'll be right back.
It wasn't me.
No, I'm not saying it was. You're not really in much condition to unplug anything right now.
All right, you go for it.
Keep talking.
I find it interesting that Babcock switches up the lines quite a bit, because there's not really a scoring problem in Toronto. And usually when lines get switched up is because there's a lack of scoring, like in Montreal. When there's not much scoring, some of the lines get switched up, which is what you would expect. There's never really been a scoring issue in Toronto, yet the lines get switched up quite a bit. And that's to me, that's not their problem. Their problem is defense. So anyway, I just find that a little strange. I'm sure some Toronto fans agree and are very frustrated by the constant switching of lines.
And this could be a function of getting ready for the playoffs and trying different things like you would normally do in the preseason prior to the regular season. The coach is, maybe it is Babcock, saying, okay, well, let's try these three guys and not those three guys and see how it works, because this is the time he can afford to make these experiments. He can't afford to make these experiments more than 2 weeks from now. So that could be a bit of that too. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it's just like their lineup hasn't really changed that much this year as far as deadline impact. So these guys have been playing together basically for the last 2 years. Like Matthews, Marner, and Nylander, and Johansson, and Kapanen, and like Marlowe's been there.
Yep, he's been
the
there
only
now.
real new addition this year has been Tavares for the most part, and Tyler Ennis, I guess. But I mean, I don't know. I just find it a little weird that it's been basically 2 years of the same team, and we don't have set in stone lines. Like Bergeron and Marchand have been playing together basically for the past 7 years.
Since they were children.
Like, and they were put together when not young, but when Marchand basically entered the league. They had success. I'm sure there was a part where they didn't have success, but they're still playing on the same line. Like, they obviously have chemistry. If you have chemistry once, then it's there and you can always find it again. So the fact that Nylander and Matthews were split up for a very long time, and now they're playing back together again, why were they split up? So,
it's a mystery.
Anyways, so are you worried about Toronto playoffs? Do you think they can actually compete in the playoffs?
Right now, with Boston as their opponent, and despite the fact Boston is not a solidly winning team the last week or two, Boston is so dangerous and so powerful. I think Boston has to be a hard favorite in the series, frankly. I don't think Toronto has the defensive skills, and I don't think they have the consistent goaltending. Anderson sometimes can be just lights out. And now they had Sparks in last night, so Anderson was the goalie of record, I think, the Friday night game. But Sparks was in last night, and I don't blame him for a lot of the goals, but some of them I think he'd like to have back. But Toronto's hanging a lot of hope on a very shaky team right now, I think.
So based on what's happening right now with the Toronto Maple Leafs, what's your prediction for that series as far as games won and games lost?
I'd say right now Boston in 5.
Boston in 5.
I think they wrap it in Game 5.
I have a little bit more hope for Toronto. I'm going to say Boston in 6. I think Toronto has the ability to at least pull out 2 games. If they don't, it's going to be a massive failure.
Yeah. Toronto has to win one of the first 2 in Boston, I think, for them to have a chance.
They must.
If they don't win one of the first 2 in Boston, I think they maybe get 1 at home, and then Boston comes back in Game 5 and closes it out. But I'm not hoping for that. Frankly, I'm hoping for the opposite result. I really want Toronto to do well this time because Toronto fans, many of whom are very good friends of mine, have endured and suffered for decades. Mm-hmm. Decades more than I've even suffered, and they deserve to have something to be happy about in the spring other than a golf game.
What's the percentage chance of Toronto sweeping Boston? Is it 0?
I think it's -0.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way that Boston does not win a whole bunch of games, but even one. To say Boston will be swept by Toronto, look, crazy stuff happens. Crazy stuff has happened every year, and you never know. And this year will be just like that. One of the 8 series somewhere, crazy things will happen. But I don't think it'll be in this series.
I agree. I think that's a 0% chance. And that's actually not really a shot against Toronto because I think that Toronto probably does have the ability to sweep a team, but that's really more of a compliment towards Boston that I don't think that would ever happen, regardless of what team. Even if Boston played Tampa Bay in the first round, I don't think that Tampa Bay sweeps Boston.
No.
Because Boston they just have too many. They're too deep. They're too consistent in the net. I just think that overall, they're just too good of a team to get swept.
Totally. I completely agree. Boston is a much more balanced team than Toronto is, offense versus defense. They've got 2 great goalies as well. Everything I just said about the Islanders a while ago would apply to some degree with Boston, with Rask and Halak. What a fantastic tandem. And I've surmised before and maybe predicted that other teams will be going this way rather than a massive, $10 million super-duper goalie that starts 65 games and then a throw-in, $1 million throw-in. I think more teams will, maybe they can't afford to, but they're going to try to find 2 starting goalies and swap them off
I agree,
if they can afford it. And Boston's doing it now. The Islanders are doing it now. Other teams are trying but failing. But I think you'll see more of that. And I think Boston, for that reason, is very well set up for the playoffs.
I agree. I completely agree, actually. What about Calgary then? Because Calgary has Mike Smith and Riddick.
Yeah, and I think we'll see what they...
Are you worried about Calgary?
I'm less worried, but I'm worried.
Because, Calgary is sitting in number 2 position right now in the NHL.
They are. And Calgary and San Jose are flipping back and forth all the time.
Yeah.
I am worried about Calgary.
I am actually as well.
Yeah.
And only in net.
Mm-hmm.
Because Mike Smith, he reminds me of Lundqvist a little bit. And not because they're both old. Not that late 30s is old, but it is in the NHL. They have amazing games where they look like the best goalie in the NHL, and then they have games where they really look their age. So you never know what goalie you're going to get. So I think that plays in the confidence factor of Calgary fans and Calgary coaches and
even players. If they don't have ultimate faith in their goalie, like it was quite obvious 2 or 3 years ago in the Montreal scenario where if Price was the starting goalie, the team played differently because they knew that they had that last chance back there. So they could take a little more risk. They could be a little more offensive, a little more open. But if it wasn't Price, if it was anybody else. Even when Halak was there, frankly, if you go back far enough. I think Montreal played differently in front of those other goalies that weren't Price. And I think the same thing may happen to any team.
So you think Calgary may be playing differently in front of Smith than they are in front of Riddick?
I don't know enough to say that because I haven't watched them enough to in both different scenarios, but I just think it's a mental thing that would happen no matter what team you're on.
I agree.
Maybe.
No, I agree. That's a good point. As far as the game recaps go, let's get through this quickly if you don't mind. The first game was the St. Louis Blues versus the Pittsburgh Penguins. St. Louis won 5-1, 4 goals on 13 shots for Murray, and he actually made some pretty incredible saves in that span of 13 shots. So it really could have been probably about 5 goals in 13 shots or 6 goals. But really, really poor Pittsburgh coverage in their own zone, just leaving guys open and just not back checking and stuff. It was a pretty poor defensive game by Pittsburgh.
I watched most of that game live, actually, when it was happening because it was on television.
What'd you think?
I was very impressed with St. Louis. And I was very unimpressed with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh did not show the kind of team that they should be showing because they've got a talented group, but they didn't really show it. And I thought Binnington was very good, but he didn't have to be outstanding.
No, he didn't. That's why I kind of in a lot of these games when I talk about the game recaps, I either talk about a team playing really, really well or a team playing really, really poorly, and that basically translates to this game had the outcome because this team lost the game versus this team won the game. Like I think Pittsburgh lost this game more so than St. Louis winning this game. If that makes any sense.
I agree. I think Pittsburgh, excuse me.
Holy lifting.
I didn't bring a drink down today, and I'm now starting to regret that, but I'm okay. Well, you always complain when I bring one down, and I didn't today, just for that reason.
I'm glad.
Yeah, I know you are.
I hope you'll be okay, though.
I'll be fine. But Pittsburgh, team against team on any other given night, if it was a everything's on the line kind of game, and Crosby's got his face on, and they go out on the ice, I think Pittsburgh wins Game 7 of a series between the two of them anytime, right now, the way they're currently structured. But Pittsburgh didn't have it. They just didn't have the will to win.
And they have to play again today.
Yeah, and they were at home of all things. They were at home, and now they're on the road in Philly today. Big difference. They're on the road, and I have predictions for later.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about that. But Pittsburgh, they were at home. They had rest the night before. They should have been very competitive.
I agree. So, do you think it was the afternoon game factor?
I think that has to play into it.
I think so too, because a lot of NHL players, if not all NHL players, have naps. They like to nap in the afternoon. They come out for the morning skate. They go home. They nap. They get up. They have a nice meal. They go to the
spaghetti.
Yeah, they go to the arena and then they play. Like it's a tradition. So I think that breakup of the tradition, I think it does. It definitely plays a factor in players.
There's so much we don't know about how the human body works and how the circadian rhythm inside affects your performance and your concentration. Most of these things, I think, are mental toughness and mental acuity things. They're not physical things. You can bench press the same amount of weight at 3 p.m. that you can bench press at 8 o'clock at night.
I agree.
I don't think there's any difference there. But it's your concentration factor. It's where your brain is in the course of your day and what you're used to. Like you said, they have a tradition. It's something they do all the time. Some players, I'm sure they don't all do it, but many of them do have that game routine. They do. Well, some of them are so damn superstitious. One skate goes on before the other one. Then you tie 3 laces of that skate, then you switch, and then you put on one elbow pad, and then you call your mom, whatever. There's a whole...
There's one player, I read it last year, he only uses a certain toothbrush on game days. On non-game days, he uses a different toothbrush.
And it's funny because on game days, I always drink out of the same coffee cup and out of the same mug.
Yeah.
My soft drink at night, if I pour some Coke Zero in, I always use the same glassware every game day. But I can tell you, just from looking at the frigging standings, it doesn't always work.
No, it doesn't.
And it doesn't always work for the players, too. I would stick with the superstition until it stopped working, and then I'm gone. I'm changing that. I'm changing my underwear, or I'm changing my coffee cup, or whatever, right?
Not to get off track here, but I've been doing a lot of research on Russia lately, and I was reading some of their traditions and some of their superstitions and stuff. They have a lot of weird superstitions, and not that we don't, because we do. But some of can I share some of their?
Oh, please, yeah.
And I'm not sure if these are true, but
it doesn't matter if they're good. It doesn't matter if they're true.
Yeah, you're not supposed to blow, or not. You're not supposed to whistle inside someone else's home, because it brings upon bad luck financially for the person who owns the home.
Wow.
So if you whistle, you're supposed to only do it outside. You're never supposed to shake hands with anyone in a doorway. You're either supposed to go in the doorway and shake hands, or they have to come out, and it's considered very bad luck if you shake hands in a doorway, apparently.
Who knew?
Never give, if you buy roses for someone, whatever, never, ever give even amount of roses to anyone. It has to be odd. It's very, very bad luck if you give an even amount of roses, because the only people who are supposed to get even amount of roses are the dead, basically at funerals.
Really? Because here it's a dozen roses, right?
Yeah,
If Valentine's Day, whatever.
Exactly.
And it's been a long time since I sent a dozen roses to your mother. The last time I did, I got told.
You got told.
If you're going to spend that kind of money, just give it to me.
Dang.
Don't give me flowers that are going to die in 2 days.
Logical.
Very logical, very practical lady, and smart.
Yeah.
So there's been no more roses since then. That's a good one.
But
an odd number.
Strange though, eh?
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. That's all I got. That's all I can remember for right now. But
Okay.
if you're from Russia and you have any others, let me know in the comments. Okay, so the next game was the Detroit and Islanders game.
Mm-hmm.
Did you watch the highlights from this game?
I did.
Excellent, because I remember last week there were some games where you did not watch the highlights.
Yeah, but I didn't watch the NHL Network highlights. I just watched the highlights on the hockey broadcast last night after the game. So David Amber, who was one of the CBC announcers back in the studio or in the game center or whatever, he was trying to say that Athanasiou had one of the most interesting names in hockey, which is true. But when he said it, he mispronounced the name.
That's awesome.
So it was kind of funny. But I did see the highlights, but I don't have a vivid recollection. So
Bernier was amazing. He was outstanding. 42 shots by the Islanders, and Bernier made some absolutely highlight reel saves. And it's the reason I'm wearing some Detroit merchandise today. I just really thought that his game lately has been really, really well, even though the Detroit hasn't had that great of a season. I mean, they played Tampa twice in the past 2 weeks, and both games were close.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate that from a team that's long and far away from the playoffs. So.
Yeah, they have a lot of pride in Detroit, and they'll play well until the last game of the season.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, the game after that was the Florida and LA game, and Florida won 4-3. To be honest, I had a negative interest in this game. It's nothing to do with Florida or the players on the team, or it's nothing to do with LA. There's just nothing on the line. Do you ever feel that way in certain games, like when two kind of not necessarily bad teams, but teams that aren't really playing for anything play each other?
Yeah.
I have no interest.
They're not contender teams. They're not in the same conference. They're not in the same division.
Yeah.
So they have so little effect on each other's lives.
Exactly.
It's just get it over with.
Yeah.
But I love that the win was Sam Montembeault.
Yeah, Sam Montembeault. I think he's
4-0.
He's 4-0, and
with an overtime loss.
He made some incredible saves. In the game yesterday. It was actually a really good game, even though where I was going. I had no interest in the game, but based on the highlights and based on some of the game that I watched, it was actually a pretty good game. So.
Yeah. So they're in Anaheim tonight. They're probably going to come back with is Longo healthy? Or
I have no idea.
Yeah. So we'll see, but he's been a great story. Sam Montembeault. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Absolutely.
He's a .239 goals against average, .906 save percentage on a team that's struggled this year.
Defensively, yeah.
So good for them.
The next game was the Winnipeg-Calgary game. Winnipeg won 2-1. That game really had a playoff feel. Did you get a chance to watch any of that game?
I did actually, yeah.
It's a pretty defensively impressive game from both teams. I think the shots were like 28-21 or something like that. Hellebuck played kind of like he did last year, where he had probably the best season of his career. Just great defense all around. It really felt like a playoff game where I would say probably the two best Canadian teams at the moment. No offense to Toronto, but they really played. They were really getting ready for that playoff style hockey where they tried to shut everything down. They paid more attention to their system that they play versus trying to work on chemistry or trying to work on nice, amazing goals and stuff. Like they were really concentrated on the actual system game that they were playing. So, and I think both teams did that yesterday. And it was a very good game. So
it was indeed.
The game after that was the Boston-Columbus game. Boston won 2-1. I saw someone say online that what a waste of a trade it was to get Duchesne. And I'm thinking, well, that's funny because every time I watched Columbus play, or every time I look at the score sheet, Duchesne's scoring goals. So, like, what the hell is everyone else on the team doing? And he scored one yesterday, a very nice one actually. But Bergeron and Marchand kind of did their usual chemistry thing yesterday and scored the overtime goal there.
Before the game, do you know who dropped the ceremonial puck?
Conor McGregor, and then he almost ran away when he dropped the puck.
He didn't know he was supposed to stick around and shake hands.
Yeah.
He just swaggered off. So Marchand, when he got the overtime winner, did you see what he did? He did the Conor McGregor kind of like that. It was actually funny. I'm not Marchand's biggest fan. In fact, I'm not a fan at all. I'm negatively disposed towards the guy, but when he pulls off something that's kind of funny and he's an outstanding hockey player, like that overtime goal yesterday was grand.
Yeah.
Just grand.
I really like that as well.
I love that.
That's cool.
Great. Yeah.
The Chicago and Montreal game, Chicago went 2-0. Corey Crawford was a literal god. He broke his career high of shot or saves in a game. Some of the saves that he was making weren't just like random puck on net saves. They were highlight reel saves that you only make once every 2 months, and he made like 6 of them last night.
Yeah, but it's important you said he made 6 of them. He probably did make about 6 of them, and that means there were 42 other shots that he saved where Montreal shot right on his chest.
It was bad.
They weren't picking corners. They weren't going low. They were going right at his chest every single time. And
that's been Montreal's problem for the past 20 years.
Yeah, really. I don't. Like, some of the players obviously go for the corners, but I thought Montreal had a very poor effort. Price actually played very well.
He did.
He played very well, but Crawford was just lights out excellent.
Yeah. Montreal does not have execution.
No, they don't. They can't assert themselves. They can't take over a game. They should have won that game. Of the 10 games Montreal has left to play, 9 of them are against teams that are as good as or better than they are.
Oh, Montreal's done.
It's toast.
Montreal will not make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's basically hopeless at this point for Montreal fans.
Yeah.
It mathematically not, but realistically, yeah. Because they're not playing the kind of hockey that they need to play to be assertive, to take over a game and to win that game. They had a few games like that earlier in the season where the Domies and the Gallaghers and those kinds of grinding players would step up. But when you've got like poor Lehkonen hitting posts all the time and just the poor shooting, like Lehkonen actually, I guess, in hitting the post, good for him because he wasn't trying for the goalie's chest, which I guess is a good thing. But I thought Drouin was just pathetic. Drouin, and there's been a bit of controversy in Montreal because after the last loss, Andrew Shaw made some comments and he called out, not by name, but he called out some of his colleagues that they weren't all showing up for the full 60 minutes.
You trade him?
Shaw?
No, Drouin.
Yes.
I do
trade him in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I think my number one goal, I think Drouin was a good experiment. It doesn't help that Sergachev is now doing really well in Tampa and Galchenyuk is doing really well in Arizona. So some of these trades just don't work out, and let's cut the losses.
You don't think the Domi-Galchenyuk trade worked out for Montreal?
I think ultimately, just to look at the last 2 months, I'd say Arizona's starting to pull ahead on that trade.
Interesting.
I'm a big fan of Domi, and I'm not saying get rid of him. Definitely keep him. He's an amazing spark plug, and it's been his best year of his life being in Montreal, so I think he's a good fit for the team, and I think he's being well used. But he does get invisible for games on end sometimes, and I guess we all do.
You know what I find interesting? That when Drouin makes defensive lapses and giveaways and stuff, which happens more than anyone in the NHL, I'd bet my life on it, he doesn't get punished for it. He's always out the next shift. But Kotkaniemi last night played, I think, 2 shifts in the third period because of his defensive mistakes.
Yeah.
Because he's young. Well, guess what? So is Jonathan Drouin. He's like 24.
Yeah.
Like,
he got punished by the fans last night. They expect more. You won't get punished by Julien.
But why?
Well, I think it's part of being a francophone, Quebec-born player in Montreal. You have
and there's a
free
problem
pass.
right there.
I agree it's a problem, but it's understandable.
Is it?
Yes, it is. It's an understandable problem. I'm not saying I would do it, but I'd never be in that position, would I? But I think you're a golden boy just by virtue of the fact you're a hometowner.
Yeah. Well, why does Claude Julien care about that?
Well, I think he's one himself.
So
more or less.
So you think he's playing favorites?
Oh,
or do you think he's playing favorites, or do you think he's being told to play favorites?
I don't know what the conversation would be between him and Jeff Molson. I'm not sure, and Bergevin. I don't know if he would take that kind of direction, but he may just assume he knows what they want. Mm-hmm. But the fans, I think, made a big statement last night at the end of the game when Drouin. Well, for one thing, why was Drouin even on the ice in the last minute and a half? He's been an invisible hockey player. You've got your goalie pulled. You're down 2 goals. You're trying to get some offense, and you got Drouin out there, who's a giveaway machine, as you say. And he's got fantastic skill. He's got great muscle memory, all those automatic things that you need to physically have to be a competitive hockey player. He's got all that, but he's got no judgment. He's got no judgment, just the basic things, like don't pass the puck unless you have a target to pass it to.
Exactly.
That's kind of a basic hockey thing.
Yeah.
Like 4-year-olds know that. Don't just throw the puck away. And he does that all the time. And I would have him on the bench if it were me. Mm-hmm. And I don't think the Francophone fans would be too upset with me if I did that. I would trade him, maybe for another Francophone, but I would trade him. I'd move him as quickly as I could while he still has value. He's still young. There might be some crazy team out there who thinks they can turn him into a good hockey player before it's too late. But Chris Nyland said a few weeks ago on the Habs Hockey Inside Out podcast, they put the question to him, like, Chris, do you think Drouin can be turned into a better hockey player? And Chris said, no. Nah, not going to happen. That was it. And I agree with him.
Do you think that Claude Julien's job is on the line at the end of this year?
I don't.
I don't either, and it pisses me off.
I don't. It's funny because when you see like the top 6 possible candidates for the Jack Adams, he's often on that top 6 list. Nowhere near the top of it, but he's on that list for the Jack Adams. And then there are some other conversations, maybe, among some probably diehard fans that are not happy with how things are going, that would rather see a change there. But I agree with you. I don't think he's in any danger at all because even if Montreal tanks in the next 10 games, they've probably still outperformed the expectations.
I also agree with that, yeah. The next game was the Ottawa-Toronto game, and Ottawa won 6-2. And basically, we've kind of talked about this before, defensive breakdowns by Toronto, and Ottawa just played super opportunistic in that game last night. As soon as they had a break or an opportunity, they just flicked a switch and they were off to the races. So really opportunistic by Ottawa and just complete defensive breakdowns by Toronto. So
did you watch the game or even
I watched? I was going to say I watched most of the game. I didn't watch most of the game. I watched just less than half of the game.
That's pretty good. That's probably about what I saw. I would jump through it on the PVR and stop if I saw anything cool happening. That goal by Gibbons was great, where he's spinning around.
Oh, heck yeah.
And not even looking, and he scores. I thought that was great. And on the third goal for Ottawa, my boy Rodolphe Balcers got an assist, and it was a nice one, too.
It was.
He was right in that play. It was great. But Toronto, they really came out with a hard push in the first period. That's uncharacteristic of a team that's played the night before, played it in an emotional game the night before. Mm-hmm. You would think they might be flat in the first. Toronto outshot Ottawa 17-8 in the first period, and even though the score was quite docile at the time, and it was later in the game when Ottawa just climbed out of the hole and just not out of the hole, further up the ladder, I guess, and just blew it away. But Toronto really put the pressure on early on, and Nilsson was very good.
He was, yes, he was. He was very good, yeah. The game after that was the Tampa Bay Lightning-Washington game. Tampa Bay won 6-3. I mean, not that Washington doesn't have weapons, but Tampa Bay just has way too many weapons, and they just lit the lamp last night.
Yeah.
Vetchkin got 2 goals, though. He's up to, I think, 48. I think he's at 48 goals.
Wow.
Close to 50 there, so he should hit 50 goals this year, which would be awesome. And, so...
Did you see the very end of that game? I think got chippy.
Oh, yes. Someone tried to fight Tom Wilson.
Cernak.
Yeah, and Tom Wilson dropped the gloves and
dropped the gloves, but only after.
Yeah,
only after, like when he was actually there in the clutch and could have dropped the gloves and maybe stood up for himself. No, but once they had the other guy contained, Wilson skates away and then drops the gloves and as if he's going to go.
I think
that was low and cheap and dirty.
No, I think he did that.
No,
I think he did that to make fun of the other guy. Because Tom Wilson maybe wanted to fight him early in their shift or something, and he wouldn't. And then the guy only wanted to fight him when Tom Wilson was kind of down on the ice or whatever. I think Tom Wilson did it and okay, yeah, now you're going to want to drop your gloves. Now you're going to want to drop your gloves. Now that I'm down, you can take advantage of it.
Maybe.
I think I got that feel from him.
I didn't react well to that at all. I'm not a Wilson fan, as you know.
I'm not either.
But
I'm not either.
I respect his skill, and it's a shame. Not quite the Marchand-like, but
he does have a lot of skill, though. You're
amazing skill, and yet just does the stupidest. Like some of those hits he's laid out, his suspensions. I think he's a dangerous. I'd never have him on my team.
Yeah, I agree.
I just would not do it. But anyway,
the Carolina-Buffalo game, Carolina won 4-2. Allmark with some questionable goals. There was one specifically from a bad angle. I think it was by Williams or someone.
Right.
And Allmark was right on the net, and somehow it snuck in. So it was a pretty questionable goal against. And but anyways, that was a huge win for Carolina. Still in that push. Looks like they're going to make the playoffs.
Looks like they're going to make it. Yeah, they won, and Columbus got a mercy point on their game, which we'll get to, and Montreal lost. So Montreal's now they were able, or could have been able, other things being equal, to be right in the mix, and almost a three-way tie for that 7th and 8th spot. Now they're looking way up. So good for Carolina.
Heck yeah.
They needed to pull it off. Did you see the Selly?
Weren't they playing curling or something?
Curling, yeah. There was two guys pretending to sweep, and I think it was a helmet was the curling stone.
Yeah. Bunch of jerks.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's awesome for Carolina. Minnesota and the Rangers. Minnesota won 5-2. This was a must-win game for Minnesota.
Really?
Donato with 2 goals. Again, that trade's looking pretty favorable in Minnesota's favor. And yeah, that was a must-win.
Yeah.
I didn't watch any of the game. I just watched the highlights. Just to be honest with you guys, glad they won though. That was I would like to see Minnesota make the playoffs. They're kind of that team that no one talks about for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And they're always the team that probably makes the playoffs, but probably goes out in the first round. They never go too deep, so they don't really get a lot of attention to that. I think that's a shame. So I would like to actually see them make the playoffs and go pretty deep. However, I don't necessarily want them to dethrone Arizona.
I was just about to say that same thing.
Yeah, so I will talk about Arizona in a little bit. But,
yeah.
Actually, we'll talk about them next because that is the next game, the Edmonton and Arizona game. Edmonton won 3-2 in overtime. McDavid was on fire all night. I watched the majority of this game. It was actually a really, really good game. Arizona hit the post a bunch of times. They came really close to taking that 3-2 lead in the third, but they just kind of collapsed in overtime. They defensively, it was just bad. And then McDavid, he doesn't need a lot of room to do his work, and he didn't have a lot of room last night in that goal.
That shorthanded goal, the minute Chiasson got the puck, McDavid was gone.
Yeah.
But when he got the puck up to McDavid, he still hadn't passed the defenseman. It was Larson. But he did after that. And they showed him later. I don't know if you saw the replay later on, but they actually had a speedometer on him. They had the computer control thing. He got 37.8 kilometers an hour as he was crossing the blue line going in. And then he made those 3 strides, and then boom.
That's awesome.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The speed he generated and just the hockey sense and the knowledge. Of course, the team knows him.
Yeah.
And he basically said, I'm going to take off because Chiasson's going to find me.
Yeah, exactly.
And he did. And it was beautiful.
It was a nice goal.
Yeah, it was. But, Edmonton was it's too late for them, I think.
You think it's too late?
I do. I think it's too late. There's so many teams above them. They're looking up. They're like 5 points out or something now. Mathematically, no. But realistically, I can't see them climbing over Minnesota and climbing above.
And that's where it is for me. It's more about the teams that they're surrounding. Chicago has won 5 in a row. Arizona is playing really good hockey, the best hockey there after a year. Minnesota's right there. There's so many other teams in the mix that Edmonton just doesn't have what it takes, I think, to climb over those teams. Mm-hmm. Even if they won all of the rest of their games, I still don't even know if they could pull it off. But anyway.
And those 2 goals by Galchenyuk were very nice.
Yeah.
The second one coming only 12 seconds after Edmonton had gone ahead 2-1.
Yeah.
Galchenyuk ties it up right away.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great statement. But, of course, McDavid got the game-winning goal. As the game began, I watched most of this game too. As the game began, they were talking about the 2 goalies. And now I guess I've already pre-delivered the answer, so I'll just say it rather than ask it. Since January 1st, up until the beginning of last night's action, since January 1st, Kemper has the best record in the league.
Yeah, Kemper has been amazing. He's been played so well. And the same thing happened to Arizona last year with Antti Ranta.
Yeah.
Antti Ranta from like January 29th to April, whenever the playoffs or the season ended, he and the Arizona Coyotes, I think, had the best record in the NHL. It's weird how some teams like Anaheim would always start so slow and then just take off. They did that like 6 years in a row. It's weird how some teams play differently at certain times of the year. Like Montreal usually plays really, really well at the beginning of the year.
And then fades
regardless of how the season ends, they always play really well, and then they fade off. So it's weird.
He's 13-4-1 now.
Nice.
It's just incredible. Since he started that good run of his. And that's his first regulation loss.
Wow. Wait, what?
First regulation loss since the 1st of January.
But he didn't lose in regulation last night.
Or actually, yeah, that's not his first regulation loss. He's 13-5-0. Good. Thank you for that correction. Nicely done.
13-4-1?
He was 13-4-0.
Oh.
Now he's 13-5-0.
No, he's 13-4-1.
Oh, okay, yeah, because overtime is the second. Okay, yeah. Boy, this is going well. You have an edit thing, right? You can cancel this whole last 5 minutes.
Edit this.
That'd be great if you edit all this out.
No.
Because
I wouldn't do that.
It really is a dramatic display of my stupidity.
That's okay. The last game was the Nashville-San Jose game. I literally have nothing to say about this game other than Nashville won 4-2 because I don't know what happened as far as like I didn't watch any of the highlights. I didn't watch any of the game. I didn't read any recaps. I literally don't know what happened. I just know the score, and that's so wrong of me because I do this podcast and run this channel. But honestly, I was asleep, and I couldn't watch it anyways because it wasn't on TV. And that's...
Yeah, Arvidsson got 2 goals, and the 2-goal margin was achieved in the third period because it was 2-2 going in the third. So that's all I know, too.
I checked the score with like a minute and 50 seconds left, and I think Nashville was winning 3-2. Like that's all I know. And I woke up and we came down here. So
there we go.
Today's games: New Jersey Devils and the Colorado Avalanche. Who are you predicting?
Just before we get into today's, we should fess up for last week's predictions. I got 2 correct that you got wrong. You got 2 correct that I got wrong, and we both got another one correct out of the 5 games last week. So we were both 3 for 5.
Interesting.
Yeah, but different games. So we weren't that great. Now we can talk about today's games because we'll be so much better today.
Yeah. New Jersey and Colorado.
Colorado's home. I'm picking Colorado.
I am also picking Colorado. New Jersey just really struggling with injuries right now. Yeah. St. Louis and Buffalo.
St. Louis and Buffalo. St. Louis is on the road. They need this game. Buffalo's pretty well out of the picture. St. Louis still needs to get some good games underneath them here. So I'm picking St. Louis.
I'm also picking St. Louis. The Islanders in Minnesota.
Minnesota.
I'm also picking Minnesota. This is a must-win game for Minnesota. They have to win this game.
They had to win last night's game, and they got to win this game too.
And the Islanders are struggling a little bit offensively, so I'm thinking that Minnesota, this should be a win for Minnesota.
They got to lock it down today.
Yeah. Vancouver and Dallas.
Dallas.
I'm also picking Dallas.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Philadelphia and Pittsburgh.
Now, we talked a little bit about this, but without getting their prediction. Pittsburgh had a rough go. Did I say they were in Philadelphia? Because that's not correct. They're home. So Philly's in Pittsburgh, but I've got Pittsburgh chosen as my prediction.
I have Pittsburgh chosen as well. I think they're pissed off from yesterday.
And they did that last time.
Yes.
They got humiliated the night before, and they came back and just went, "Ugh."
I told you that they'd do that against Boston.
Yeah.
I said they're going to end Boston's streak because they're pissed off about what happened the night before. Mm-hmm. Same thing's happening tonight. Pittsburgh is beating Philadelphia.
Bingo. You heard it here first. Don't even bother watching the game, folks.
Florida and Anaheim?
This is tough, and not knowing what the goalie situation is going to be. Right now, though, I have a good feeling about Florida, so I pick Florida.
Oh, I pick Anaheim.
Oh, finally.
Yeah.
Finally, we don't agree.
Anaheim is going to win this game.
Okay, and you're usually right with these ones, because when you make that prediction so forcefully, so authoritatively, I want to change my mind, but I can't. So we'll see.
Only because Florida likely won't play Montembeault.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Edmonton versus Vegas.
Edmonton absolutely has to win this game, but they're not going to.
I agree. Vegas is going to win this game.
Yeah.
My players of the week, would you like to take any guess? Is?
Oh, wow. Players of the week. Sergachev.
No. No.
I don't know.
Matthew Tkachuk is my player of the week.
He has been unbelievable.
Yeah, 4 games played, 6 goals, 4 assists, 10 points, and he was a +7. Shoutouts, honorable mentions, Kucherov, Perlini, and Gaudreau also had really, really good weeks.
Yeah. Unfortunately, one of Perlini's good games was last night.
Yeah. Goalie of the week.
Vasilevsky.
Negative. Corey Crawford. 3 games played, 3 wins, .978 save percentage, 0.75 goals against average.
That'll do.
That'll do. Do you know who had a better week statistically? Basically, to get my goalie of the week, you need to play at least 3 games. However, my honorable mention here is Ben Bishop, who only played 2 games, but he had 2 wins. His save percentage was 1. His goals against average was 0. He had two shutouts.
Oh my goodness!
Statistically you can't get any better.
No, so, that's right. Oh wow, that's great.
If he had to play 3 games, I don't know. If he had to play 3 games and won the 3rd game, even if he had let in a goal or 2, statistically he would have been very close to Corey Crawford. So who knows? Streaks: Chicago on a 5-game winning streak, Tampa Bay on a 4-game winning streak, Florida with 4. As far as losses, Buffalo at 4 and the Rangers at 3. And the last thing I want to talk about is the Toronto St. Pat's jerseys.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on this?
1 night, maybe. 2 nights in a row, not so much.
Really? But it's St. Patrick's Day weekend.
Yeah, well, St. Patrick's Day is today as we're filming this. It's a day.
But Toronto doesn't play today.
Well, that's fine. That means they should use the jersey last night. But they used it Friday night for the home game, too. I don't know. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of the green.
I don't mind it, actually. It's different. It's different. It's completely different than anything else in the NHL.
It is, and I like that they're doing well. Not completely different because Carolina Hurricanes have come in Hartford colors to Boston a couple of times, totally Hartford uniforms, which I think is similar to what Toronto's doing with the St. Pat's. But I like the idea of it, and I like how the broadcasters have bought in, even for the logo. They were using on the score clock, on the TV up in the corner. They had the St. Pat's logo. I love all of that. I'm just a design. It's just a design issue for me. It's a great idea. It's a great thing to bring back the history of the team and all that. Just design wise, I wasn't thrilled with it.
I'm really impressed with Toronto because they historically are basically as old as the Montreal Canadiens, and they like Montreal in the past. I don't know, 5 years, I think, has had 2 alternate jerseys. One for a Winter Classic game against Boston and another last season against Ottawa, the Centennial Classic jersey. Toronto, just in the past 2 years, has had, I think, 4 jerseys. The St. Pat's jersey, the Toronto Arenas jersey. They have a white one, I think, which has a majigger, a line in the back.
A majigger.
And I think they have one more, too. I can't remember what it is. But like Toronto's really embraced the alternate and 3rd jersey and stuff. And I wish the Montreal Canadiens would do that. It pisses me off that they don't. But again, I collect jerseys, so I want more options, right? So you can see where I'm coming from. But I actually really like the St. Pat's jerseys. I have no interest in getting one because they're so expensive. But anyways, that's all. That's all I got to say. That's all I have.
That's all you got. Well, as we've been doing the last several weeks, as we get closer to the playoffs and near the end of the regular season, I've been delving into the larger standings and the potential for each team. And I'll do the quick intro. At the beginning of the season, any team has the capability of winning all of its games and finishing with 164 points. Or a team can have 0 points, and usually teams are somewhere in the middle of that. Last week, I talked about the possible power production of these teams. Tampa Bay Lightning, for instance, last week had a potential of 134 points. But because they went on a 4-game winning streak, they still have a potential of 134 points. Only 3 teams in the NHL have the same potential point total today that they did a week ago. Chicago's another one with 95 points that they could still salvage.
And Florida
is the other one. Very good. They have 98 points that they could have. Right now, of course, they only have 76. Excuse me. And every other team slid. So their nice number from last week, for instance, Montreal last week was 105. Now they're at 101. Every other team went down usually 2, sometimes 4 or 5 points. And that's what happens, and that's what would happen on the night after Game 1 of the regular season. Some teams would still be at 164 because they didn't play an opening night. Other teams would already be down to 162 because they lost the first game. And then teams will slide down as time goes on. It's like having points taken away in your driver's license rather than adding to them, I guess. Anyhow, what the standings show today and the matchups as they would be has the Toronto Maple Leafs playing Boston, as we already spoke about. Boston has a potential of 121 points. Toronto's at 117. They could still pass Boston and get home ice advantage. But frankly, even if they do that, I still don't think they win the series right now, the way they're playing. Currently, Boston holds, not currently, for this year, Boston holds a season series lead of 3-1. So they've already played 4 games against each other, and Boston's had the upper hand on that. Tampa Bay would play the Columbus Blue Jackets if everything started today. And as much as I'm very high on how Columbus has performed lately, I don't think they want to draw Tampa as their first-round opponent.
I don't think so either.
If they do draw Tampa, I'm sure they'll give it their best. And who knows, as the chemistry continues to come together in Columbus with the new additions, they may be able to mount a pretty good effort against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, the thing is they got Bobrovsky in that, right? So he's probably one of the best goalies in the world.
You never know.
And if he gets in the zone, I mean, you never know, really.
That's right. Pittsburgh would play. I got the wrong sheet out here. Nothing's changed so far, I don't think. Let me back up. I had last week's. I was so proud of my Excel spreadsheet from last week. I put it out in front of me. Boston, Toronto, Tampa Bay would play Columbus still, and they're 3-0 against Columbus this year. So that's substantial.
That's not surprising.
And it's something that Tampa Bay must feel pretty comfortable about, although they dare not feel too comfortable. Carolina would be the opponent of the first-place Washington Capitals in the Metro.
I like that matchup.
That would be a very good matchup.
Yeah, I like that.
That'd be a lot of fun. Washington holds a 2-0 lead on that.
They've only played each other twice.
They've only played twice. They have 2 more games to go. So we'll see what happens.
Those are big games.
Those are huge games for both teams. The Islanders would play Pittsburgh. Both teams are 2-1-1 against the other, if that makes any sense.
I actually really like that matchup. That would be a very good series.
That would be a very good series. I think I'd like to see that a lot. Now those are the teams in the East. The teams that are out of the playoffs right now and likely not getting in, frankly. The Montreal Canadiens, Florida, Buffalo, Detroit, Ottawa, Philly, the Rangers, and the Devils are probably on the outside looking in on the first night of the playoffs. In the West, the Winnipeg Jets are in first place only by a point, although Nashville is only 1 point behind with 2 games in hand. And Nashville actually has an easier ride. They only play 7 of the Nashville. I got to back up. I was looking at the games played instead of the games remaining category. Winnipeg has played 2 fewer games than Nashville. It's the other way around. So Winnipeg plays 8 games against quality teams out of the 11 they have left, whereas Nashville plays 7 games against quality teams out of the 9 they have left. Winnipeg is actually behind in their season series with Dallas, who they would face actually in the first round, whereas Nashville right now would be seated against St. Louis in the first round of the playoffs. And St. Louis has played Nashville 5 times. Very few teams play each other 5 times, but because of the weirdo math that goes on in the Central Division, because there's only 7 teams, so those things kind of happen. But St. Louis has beaten Nashville 4 times out of 5.
Wow.
So
interesting.
What the heck? And that right now, as the way things are set up, they would play each other.
Yes.
And the Dallas Stars would sneak in and play Winnipeg. And now when we cross over to the Pacific, Calgary would play Arizona right now, as if it were held today. San Jose would play Vegas. And
intense.
It'd be very intense. The teams that have the easiest pathway in the next week, or 2 weeks, I would say, are the Pittsburgh Penguins, who, of the 10 games they have left, only 6 of them are against quality teams that are doing well. The other 4 would be against more bottom-feeding teams, pardon the slag. The team that has the easiest run of everybody is the Columbus Blue Jackets. They play 10 more games, but only 5 of them are against contending teams.
Oh, snap.
The other 5 are against teams that they should be able to handle if they put their mind to it. So Columbus could crawl up the standings quite nicely here.
Interesting.
So there.
I like to note that the Montreal Canadiens have 81 points, which would tie them with St. Louis and put them in 3rd in the Central if they were in that division.
I noticed that. Montreal is actually only 14th in the league right now.
They have more points than both the Western Conference wildcard teams.
They do. They do. And even if we went to the playoff situation that we would prefer, 1 versus 8 and so on, it wouldn't fix that because it doesn't have an East or West parity.
Would you do 1 versus 16?
I'd be down with that.
Regardless of conference.
Yeah.
I would too. But that totally favors the entire NHL versus the conferences. And that makes the most sense. That should be a thing.
1 versus 16.
And I'm not saying this just because Montreal's in the top 16. Even if Montreal was 30th, I'd say the exact same thing.
Oh, absolutely. Because Montreal probably won't be in the top 16 when this is all over with anyway.
Exactly.
What this does do, though, on the downside, is eliminate the East versus West dynamic. And I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that, too.
Because you might end up someday with a Boston Rangers final.
Exactly.
I think that would be outstanding.
Exactly.
And I wouldn't have to stay up late.
Or Toronto-Montreal.
Who
knows?
Yeah. So 1 versus 16.
Do you know why it's never going to be this, though?
Well, travel.
I guess, but I mean...
Yeah,
But it's rivalries. The NHL wants to build rivalries. Yeah. I think that's more important than anything else.
Yeah.
I would love to try just for a year. Wouldn't you?
I would love to try it permanently, frankly.
Well, no, but I mean, just
I know I would like it. I don't know if it would be economically smart, PR smart, whatever smart, but I would love it. Because then there is actually a good advantage for finishing first. You will have home ice advantage all the way through the playoffs if you stick it. And 16 playing 1, what a lot to play for. It would be fantastic. I
want to look and see who would play each other.
I can tell you right now. Right now, the Tampa Bay Lightning would play the Dallas Stars. The
Montreal play Calgary.
Yeah, Calgary would play Montreal.
St. Louis would play Boston. Vegas would play San Jose. That's weird.
That's weird, yeah.
Columbus would play Toronto. Carolina would play Washington. Same thing.
Yeah.
Nashville would play the Islanders. Pittsburgh would play Winnipeg.
That'd be all right. They'd be some really good series right there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Come on, let's do it. Let's do this.
Come on now. Come on, Gary. Brighten up.
Tampa Bay's goal differential is plus 93. That's ridiculous.
They are such a scary team.
Yeah.
But scary teams can be fragile. Washington Capitals were a scary team for years and years and would bow out after the first or second round. So
yeah, and even in 2010 when Montreal took down Washington, that team, that Washington team and the Pittsburgh team were such good regular season teams that year. So it can happen. Nashville did it to Chicago a couple of years ago. It happens. It's going to happen this year. There's going to be a really good team, a really good seasonal team. that loses in the playoffs this year by a team that maybe just sneaks in. It's going to happen. It happens every year. We don't know what team's going to lose. We don't know what team's going to win. And that's why it's so exciting. That's why it's the NHL playoffs. So, yeah.
We might as well just drop the mic right now.
Drop the mic. Thanks, guys, for listening and watching. I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining me for this podcast. If you guys could hit the subscribe button down below, that would be awesome. If you're not subscribed already, that really helps us out a lot. Hit the like button too. Thanks for listening to us on iTunes or Google Play. If you are an audio listener only, hope you're having a good weekend and watching lots of hockey, and we'll see you in the next podcast. Adios.